Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Today is our special guest day, where we will hear from a friend of the ministry who will share their insight and stories on truth in this chaotic world. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, everybody. We're excited to have a very special guest, Kathy. Phil Hodges lives in California. Where exactly do you live, Phil?
In Rancho Palos Verdes, California.
Rancho
About 9 miles. Yeah, it's 9 miles south of the LA airport.
Right.
Oh, wow. Well, it's very nice to meet you.
Yeah. You're up, isn't Palos Verdes kind of hilly?
Yeah, we're on top of a hill, and I get to see the ocean from our back window.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And then they used to have right there, they had some kind of a world type of thing where you guys had, I know it's not there anymore, but what used to be there? Marineland, yeah. Yeah, I've been to Marineland, and I bet you used to be able to just drive down the street and see it, right?
I do. Now It's a big hotel called Terranea, and it's a lovely destination point down there.
Ah, nice. Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, Phil is a cohort of Ken Blanchard, and through our time with discipling Ken, and then he said there's some other guys around him that said they'd like to join us, so they have, and Phil's one of those guys. So we get to talk every week with Ken and just getting the word together, and we're having a great time now, actually discussing why do people tend to go to law, and so that's kind of a fun thing to do. But Phil, we're excited to have you join us. So why don't you tell us first of all a little bit about how did you come to know Christ?
Well, I was one of the proverbial children that grew up in a Christian home, and always went to church and enjoyed the Christian life as well taken care of by my parents and my sister, and moved along and went to the Navy and got married and always attended church, and everything was going along according to the externals and so forth. But it wasn't until I turned age 40, we had couple of kids, and we'd been married for about 10 years, that we got into a situation where I got involved in an investment. Now, I'm not a money person, and I got into it really for the reasons of everybody else was doing it.
Yeah.
So just to keep my credibility up at the bridge table, I had to go get some investments. And so I got involved with a couple of with a guy. It wasn't a bad thing, but it didn't turn out well. And there was some condominiums that I put some money into, and of course, with things like that, they needed more money. And about the second call, my wife Jane said, I don't really feel good about this, and I learned all of the language that I needed later, but I just got so angry. And it really ended up as the writer she sounded, the madder I got. And so at a given point in time, we really couldn't even talk about that subject because I was just all up into myself. And as I realized later on, it was my ego, both my pride and my fear, that were isolating us from one another. So that was kind of going on for a couple of months. And then one morning, I wasn't feeling well. Jane was taking the kids off to church. So she went off to church, and I was laying in bed, and she had given me a book to read, and I don't know why I was reading it, except now I know why I was reading it. But it was a book called The Disciplines of a Godly Woman by Anne Ortland. Ah. And why I'm reading this book, I don't know. Except someplace along the line, I came across a Bible verse. It was Philippians 4:6-8. And it said, have no anxiety about anything, but with prayers and supplication, make your needs known to God. And the peace of God that transcends all understanding will keep your hearts and mind in Christ Jesus. And I may have read that before and probably knew it, but the word that bounced off the page right to here was the word anything.
Mm.
And a little bit going back a business, Jane has always been the one that guides me around things. When I was having trouble with this investment, she asked me two questions. She said, have you prayed about that? I said, no.
Good woman.
I said, no, like that, no. And then the second question she said was, why not? And at the time, I didn't know what the answer was, but there were three reasons. First of all, I thought it was kind of tacky to go ask God about these condominiums in Gardena, California. It wasn't our mortgage money. It was some, discretionary funds. So it was kind of a, he's got AIDS and world hunger and all this stuff to bother him, and this was sort of, not worthy of a prayer. And then the second one, at that time, I really came to realize I didn't have a great lot of faith in the process. And I would say prayers and so forth, but I maybe likened it to maybe tying a message on the end of a string of a helium balloon and just letting it go up, and maybe I'd get an answer.
Yeah.
That was about it. And then the third one was the telling one is I didn't pray on it because I could do this myself.
Yeah, right.
So that was all the run up to this moment when this word anything came on and I said, this is my anything. And I remember rolling out of bed,
That's good.
on my knees and saying, Lord, I don't know what the words I said, prayer. I said, but I can't do this and I need help. And I'm asking for help, whatever it was. And at that moment, and I felt this feeling of warm water pouring down on my spirit. And if I could have described it, it was a peace that transcended all understanding.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So and the after that was Jane came home with the kids, and she looked at me and said, "What happened to you?" It was something had happened.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment that I started what I should have been doing. I started to become the priest in my own house.
Mm.
Jane had been carrying us in many ways, that I was all busy doing whatever I was doing and in the protect and provide mode. But so what happened with this was, just like many men will know, men, they say, women think in spider webs. They can connect everything. Men are in a knotted rope, this, then this. And it sort of ended up saying, if this works, what's else in the Bible? And this was the quickest abiding, Rich, that I can talk about, was for the next 3 months, if I could have eaten the Bible, I would have eaten it. Yeah. I was on it. I was in negotiations back in Rochester, labor negotiations. And during the caucuses, I would go run back to my room and read the Bible. And most of it, I got really hooked into Proverbs in particular at that time, and started to get language that really equated to what I was seeing in the things that I was doing and about. So
beautiful.
That was kind of the beginning of things.
Yeah, and you kind of, by the way, you said you joined the Navy. Tell us a little bit about that. What exactly did you do in the Navy? How long were you in?
I came out of Cornell University, where I met Ken and Margie Blanchard. That's another story.
Oh, fun.
But yeah, we've known each other since we're 17. But I came out and was through NROTC and went when I was on an aircraft carrier for 2 years on active duty, and then came out. But that was a wonderful leadership experience of just watching, in retrospect, how things work and how things don't work. So we went to Guantanamo Bay and then out to the Far East. And we actually landed the first Marines to end up in Southeast Asia back in 1963. So,
Wow.
Oh, wow.
yeah.
What did you exactly do when you were on the aircraft carrier?
I had a gunnery division and a deck division of guys that would make you as proud as you possibly could while they were on board and horrify you when they went on shore. But I guess the thing that I ended up, and I loved it, I was an officer of the deck underway, the carrier, so I had titular command of the ship 4 hours a day when I was 22, and that was cool. Yeah.
So you didn't, and you didn't crash it, right?
No, but I can tell you some stories. We got pretty close.
Yeah. That's fun. So, so then you talked. How did you? When and how did you meet Margie? Or excuse me, Jane.
Jane, and when I came out of the service, I packed up my resume and looked at whatever it could be. I'm sorry to.
It's okay.
And my first job out of the Navy was in Pittsburgh. I went to U.S. Steel to work in labor relations, which was what I studied at Cornell. And I was living with a bunch of guys in an apartment in Shadyside in Pittsburgh. And I'll tell you, Jane will always deny this. I was sitting in a chair with my face to the door, and a friend of mine was going up through the hallway with some girls to play bridge, and he brought them in and introduced them. And I said, "That's it." I said, "I think I'm going to marry that girl." And that, eventually that did happen, but Jane continues to deny that happened, but I'll tell you it's the truth.
Yeah.
So we met in Pittsburgh. She had come up from Kentucky, where she's from, to teach with a friend, and they were on their way to Boston, but they never got there, and we married and then moved to Rochester, and I started working with Xerox.
Great. How old were you then when you met?
27.
27. And then you got, how long did you date before you got married?
About 18 months.
Okay. You got married, and then, so how many years now you've been married? How many, tell us about your kids, grandkids?
Yeah, we're coming up on our 54th year.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, beautiful.
And we have two children and 7 grandchildren. And
how fun.
And we're blessed. They all live locally, and we all go to the same church, and we fellowship constantly together. So staying put for these since we came out to California has been a real blessing for us, and we're getting to see the next generations. So
that's amazing. That is such a gift. Yeah.
We have in our Wednesday calls, we have great stories of Phil's grandkids, and Phil. I know Phil has great joy in just being around them, and then helping them see the life of God, through them. So that's kind of fun and we could have lots of times just talking about them.
That's great.
It would be fun. And so tell us, since you are cohorts with Ken, how did you meet Ken, and then how did you get involved in your ministry called Lead Like Jesus?
Well, this was on a bus going to freshman camp in 1957.
This was like an orientation?
Yeah, an orientation camp. And the people in the bus were just going around and saying where they were from. So this kid in front of me, this blonde kid, says he was from Briarcliff, New York. Now, I live in Briarcliff, New York, and our senior class was 64. So I know that I haven't seen this kid before. So I said, "No, you're not," or I questioned him about it. And that was Ken. And years and years later, he hadn't moved to Briarcliff yet. His family was in the process of moving from New Rochelle, New York, where he was the president of the senior class of a 3,000 high school. He was a big deal, but he hadn't even got there. And he says later, I don't even know why I said that. But
that's funny.
If he had said New Rochelle, we probably wouldn't have talked.
Right.
So we've known each other since that day. We were fraternity brothers. I actually took Margie out once or twice before he did.
I think he may have said something about that when we had him on the podcast, that he had a friend who had taken her out first.
Well, that was another guy. But anyway, we have the same best man, who is a dear friend of ours and Ken's. So we've known each other all that time. And I went to the Navy and went off, and he went to be famous. But so as he would tell it, when I came to, and we've been traveling to their summer place for 50 years. So Margie and Ken and Jane and I have been close dear friends for all that time.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful. I've been there too. It's a beautiful lake up in upstate New York. Beautiful.
Oh, nice.
And it's been in Kent's family, I guess it's Margie's family, really, right?
Margie,
yeah.
So anyway, the story with Ken and how we got together was, I'll fast forward to that time when the Lord became more real to me in the 40s, and it happened to be just around 1980, 81. And Ken at that time was experiencing the 1 Minute Manager as this phenomenal thing. And as he tells the story, I was so excited to tell him about Jesus because I was so excited about that night. I guess I asked him to take a walk on the beach and asked him why he thought this thing was so successful. Anyway, the conversation turned to God, which I was delighted to help move him along on. And there's a couple of more parts of the stories, but I was a little bit ahead of him in the faith area. So when he got asked to write a book with Bill Hybels called Leadership by the Book, Ken wasn't completely comfortable with the Bible, and I was more. And so he asked if I would come along and be a co-author with this. So I instantaneously, in all of these ads, got, when that book came out, and this is written by world famous authors Ken Blanchard, Bill Hybels, and Phil Hodges. So I was kind of the other brother. I was the other brother Daryl in this group.
Yeah. Daryl, and my other brother Daryl. Yeah.
So I had lots of leadership experiences between then and when I was obviously left Xerox about 17 years later. But when that book came out, and then we went to a Bob Buford halftime program. That was the first one he ever did in Boston, and he was talking about the moving people from success to significance. And Ken liked the topic, but he kind of latched on the idea: why do you have to leave your own place to be influential in the way you want to be? So go clean up your own room. So that was his idea, and I was with him, and we talked about it. And he really at this time I worked for the Blanchard company. I'd taken early retirement. I'd worked for a year with them, learning their programs and so forth. And I was going to be a consultant to churches. That was my main goal. That all didn't work out then, but long story, I'll try to be short with it. Ken said, I really want to do something with this leadership and leading like Jesus. And so I said, okay, if you want to, then it's not a part-time job. So we floated the idea of an organization to a group of influential people who said we had the right thing. And in 1999, we went live with the Lead Like Jesus, which is the Center for Faith Walk Leadership, and I was the managing director, co-founder, and the only employee. So that's how we started it. And if the Lord had left us with what we had thought of success was going to be, we wouldn't be talking about it now. But
Right.
God blessed us with good people to move this idea of Jesus as leader along into the international ministry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. And are you, you're still, I know, you do stuff with that. What do you do with it, or what have you done with it for your role?
Well, as co-founder, I stay on the board, and one of the things that I enjoy as a role in most places, I get to do the devotions for a lot of meetings, but I'm active in that board. I teach the programs on occasion, interact with the global leadership, and sort of work with them when I'm called. But
Yeah.
and and also I teach the materials to a variety of people and places.
Yeah. So they just have a beautiful ministry, and they've given away, Kathy. They're part of the covenant. Receive it and give it away. It's fantastic. And then Phil, as you look at your own personal walk with God and abiding in the Word and abiding in relationship, maybe describe that a little bit, just for you personally. How does that look to you? And how do you enjoy your relationship with Him? And then we can have you maybe share some stories of being led by Him on some decisions that you've had to make. So maybe you could share a little bit about that.
Well, there was a time when I was doing a program in Cincinnati at an African American church, where the woman pastor got up and she started her remarks by saying, "Lord, thank you for this day that'll never come again." And that was one phrase that went right in here. And I've gotten to the idea that, and opening almost every prayer with "thank you for this day that'll never come again." It's been coming to us from eternity. It'll pass into eternity tomorrow. So in this day, we have choices, opportunities, and so forth. And the whole idea of starting the day with Christ as the center, and hopefully continuing to do that in the mundane parts, has been a part of the energy walk that I would say that has been most meaningful to me, and hopefully the people I talk to. So the discipline, when we studied Lead Like Jesus and looked at Jesus's habits and diagnosed those into solitude and to prayer and to being in the Word and to godly fellowship, those are all been ingredients that have been an important part of my walk. One great asset to that has been the man with the headphones right here. He's been leading our weekly fellowship for 20 years, and is our good shepherd teacher, and it's just a delight to continue to feed on the Word, and stay in it and call on it.
Yeah. So we do. We just let's see what the Word has to say. So that's it's a fun thing to do.
And so you connected, Phil, with Rich through Ken. Is that how that transpired? Ken gathered a group that then meets with you guys. Is that how that?
It's a long. I think you were first friends with Tim
Sotos.
Yeah. The Lead Like Jesus network of things. We've known Rich for quite a long time, but this group I asked in after Ken told me about it. So.
Yeah. It started with Ken individually, and then he brought other people in, and we've been with it for a long time. It's been fun.
That's beautiful.
Been a joy. We deal with law kinds of stuff, and it's really fun to do. Interesting enough, this last one about law was Phil's thought about, well, how can people drift to law? So, let's go find out. And we're in the Word right now, so it's really quite fun. And then Phil, as I know you've shared with us lots and lots of stories of decisions that you were led to about God speaking and showing you the truth about something. Do you have any examples you can give us of a specific thing that you had to process through to receive God's will for you?
Well, yeah, I had one. There was one that was a particularly poignant in my own mind. There have been some issues in our church, and I had been the chairman of our church for 6 years and been around as an elder and so forth. But there was a change happening with a new pastor and some new leadership that I felt very unsettled with. And people had asked me about what was I going to do, or how I was going to respond. And I did know that I finally said that my job, what came to me was how to be a good steward of my influence. And what did that look like? And and this is, again, I have to go back to Rich, as some of the exercises about settling in and abiding in and listening to waiting for the Holy Spirit to just give you that word. And the word came to me in this place is your influence is with the elders, not with the congregation, not with everything. And there was a new chairman and so forth. And I waited to know how to do that. Well, one morning, at this point during COVID, we were watching. There was an 9 o'clock live stream of the service, and I'm sitting with Jane in it, and I just get this feeling from God, from the Holy Spirit, you need to go there. So I wrote a brief letter, and I'm not a man of brief words, but it was about a 2-sentence letter to the elders asking them to reconsider something. And I typed it up, got it, and went down to the service, and happened to sit in a particular place where the new pastor was going in. He was doing a good job on what he was doing, but there was something that just didn't hit me right. And I have never done this before or ever would do it again, but it just told me to stand up. And I stand up. And well, the guy's preaching, but my knees were shaking, everything. But I stood up. And I just stood there. I didn't look at anybody. I didn't say anything because it was just stand there. And I stood for the rest of his sermon. And then the next thing that happened was I saw the new chairman of the church. It was about 4 rows ahead of me. And he's a friend of mine, but we kind of broke fellowship a little bit. And I was able to go up to him, and they were having a meeting that afternoon to decide on this thing. And so I went to him and I gave him this letter. I said, I just have been called to give you this letter. This is all it is. And I went and I went home, and I had this wonderful sense of peace that was what I was supposed to do and nothing more. Now, the vote didn't go the way that I would have hoped, but that was a great sense of spirit of, this is what I want you to do. And it was not anything that I was expecting to do or really like to do, but I said, yeah, okay, that's good. And I went home and I felt the peace. So
I love what you're describing there. As we step in, when we're abiding on something and seeking his wisdom, and he gives us specific instruction, then we are then set free truly we step in obedience to what he says to do, and then we are free from the results. It is his job to produce the fruit, and we simply are doing what he calls us to do. And I love that he just blanketed you with peace after that, to know this was your part,
Yep. And the thing is, it's been several months since then, and things have been going great at the church and so forth. And I've been able to reestablish fellowship with these guys, which probably could have been broken or strained had I not just did what I was told.
Yeah, and that's
great.
So your God said your influence is continuing. And we actually talk about this, Kathy, that God's timing isn't our timing, and that maybe the end of this, we're not there at the end of the story yet. So, at the moment, I remember Phil sharing with us is that, well, this is what happened. This is what I did. The vote didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, but he knew, well, that's not the end of the story.
Right.
And he continues to have influence there. And isn't your one of your is it grandson or yeah? Well, this is kind of funny, really.
Several weeks later, after this happened, my oldest grandson, came to our house, and he wanted to talk to Jane and I. Said, "Papa Phil, I have to tell you something. I'm dating Grace Burgoyne. This is the pastor's oldest daughter."
Oh my.
And I just said, "Oh, look, thank you. Had I done anything else, had I made anything else, the invitations would have been quite different." So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was great.
Yeah. Yeah. And the story continues. And I know, again, you don't have to go into great detail, but you were called. I remember you were called by God to help your son's group start to process through a few things. And again, being a teacher, you could have said, "Okay, I'm going to go teach them something," but you really followed the Holy Spirit. Talk just briefly about that dynamic of how you were led to assist them in stuff that they were going through.
Yeah, well, that was one that came on me. My son's got a group of friends that are from college, and he meets with them, and they actually invited me to come and do my, they didn't want to be taught, they wanted to be sort of mentored.
Yeah.
And so we've provided some conversation for them and let them go away and do things. They're as a bunch of guys in their 50s, they're still in go-go. So we don't meet as often as we had hoped, but on occasion they'll call, and we'll continue to ask them to, where their walk is and talk amongst themselves a little bit. So
Yeah.
That's been good. And the ones that I've been blessed with little opportunities. I've spoken to my grandson's Boy Scout troop about 4 times about leading like Jesus, and just enjoying that as a place to get in early with kids that are already trying to walk.
Great.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's been beautiful. Well, Phil, we really appreciate your sharing. We could go, we have lots and lots of stories, Kathy, that Phil could share. And you can see the joy he has, and listening, following the Spirit, and, he and Jane and their grandkids particularly. And it's really beautiful, Phil, that you have the privilege of your family being together. And you being the patriarch, and God,
what a blessing. Yes.
keeps having you give it away to them primarily. And then of course, in a broader way, and the joy that we have with you. So thank you so much for sharing today. And we just are excited. We'll try to have you back and pick up some more of the stories that I'd love to have the audience hear about, that I get the privilege of hearing. And it's a real joy to do a life with you together. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Well, I have to give credit to Jesus Christ and my wife.
Yeah.
She has always asked me the right question at the right time.
Yeah.
And in the right way for me to have to go,
Yeah.
and then go to prayer.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing so authentically today. It is encouraging to me to hear, and I'm sure it's encouraging to so many of our listeners. So I appreciate that.
Yep. Well, and Kathy, we'll see you tomorrow. Phil, we'll see you soon, and talk to you next week.
That's great. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay. All right. See you.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, And tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.